Hey, welcome back to Effluvium. For this episode, we have a very special guest. We are going to have multidisciplinary artist, award-winning writer, designer, and curator, Haley Epstein. She wrote this excellent book, which is a manifesto of sorts for olfaction called Nosedive. And this introduces new taxonomies, new paradigms, new ways of experiencing scent, the exploration of this most forsaken of our five senses, if you will. And it's just a brilliant book. I consider it to be essential reading. And I'm very pleased to have her as a guest. We're going to be having an excellent conversation. Just to give you a little bit of the praise that has been given to Nosedive. Christophe Ladamiel, every conservative in the fragrance industry should read it, but they won't get it. And any newcomer in the industry should read it and apply. That is, read and apply. And when we also have Name Magazine, the Olfactory Magazine, Haley Epstein relentlessly explores the world of scent at the crossroads of various artistic disciplines. Her first self-published book offers a broad, non-academic introduction to olfactory culture and scent-based creative practices. It opens with a swift summary of scientific, anthropological, historical, and cultural facts, embellished with the author's clear-cut views of the perfume industry. And there's just like these great activities and exercises, lots of historical background, lots of anecdotal stuff, which I think is great as well. And it just pushes the reader to experience olfaction in a way that we are not accustomed to, or we may have never even, imagined, to push our creativity with it. And this is more than just for those who are fragrance enthusiasts. Of course, Effluvium is designed for the fragrance enthusiasts, but this is for those who want to push their nose even further beyond perfume and just exploring scent in its many contexts. Excellent book, and I do highly recommend it. And in the description of the Effluvium live stream, there is a link to purchase it. So yes, very much recommended. So I want to get things started to discuss a little bit of Effluvium as sort of a forum for the community, and the fact that this is viewer supported. And because this is viewer supported, I really do encourage that you make some sort of contribution or donation in any way that you can. It can be as little as $5, or even if you do a super chat, it could be as little as $2. Super chats, there's no minimum. I think technically you can send 50 cents if you wanted, but maybe $1 minimum. Right now with YouTube, there is a minimum for payout for YouTube, and you have to reach $100 before they even pay you out. And I'm at currently $93. So if somebody sent me $8, I'll be able to get a payout for January. There's also Buy Me a Coffee. And I am going to bring up the pinned message for Buy Me a Coffee. So Buy Me a Coffee is another option, which is great for content creators who may not want to wait for that minimum $100 from YouTube, or have that significant percentage taken out from AdSense. Buy Me a Coffee is much more friendly to the content creator. If you buy 6 cups from Buy Me a Coffee, I will send you a sample pack. I have thousands of samples and many samples of excellent fragrances, including fragrances that we've discussed from perfumers who have been guests here on Effluvium. And I may include some of those. For 12 cups, what you can receive is a 4 full bottle grab bag plus a sample pack. So that's 4 full bottles. It's a grab bag. It's a surprise, but they are 4 from my ever-growing and overwhelming collection of fragrances. And I want to share some of the doubles that I have, or some great fragrances that I no longer need full bottle quantity of, and extend that on to our viewers. So if you buy 12 cups, that will get you 4 full bottle grab bag plus a sample pack. Mind you, each cup is $5. US only, please, for this offer at this time. I do apologize. but I cannot ship outside of the US at this time. The link is in the pinned comment, so you can go directly to the link. It's a hyperlink, which is excellent. So I just wanted to let you know, once again, viewer supported. Your support is really just beneficial to ensuring that we continue to have great content like this and great guests and great conversations. So as always, I want to thank all of you for your continued support and for showing up. And it means a great deal to me. We're just going to get to the conversation in the chat before we bring in Rachel and our guest, Catherine. And we have Philippe here. Philippe says hello with a scent of the day, Opus 11 by Amouage. Autumn's here wishing us hello, stopping by for a bit to check things out. Great to see you, Autumn. Danny is here with a scent of the day, Rose Cannelle L'Écorcerie de Parfum. And that is one I have not sampled. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Danny. And Jean-Qui Scent is here. Scent of the day, Ivoire de Bama. And thank you very much for your like. And that is also another reminder. Please be sure to hit the like button. That does help the algorithms on YouTube. We currently have 17 people tuned in. Let's try to aim for at least 17 likes, and that'd be excellent. Bilbo Fraggins. Bilbo Fraggins. Good to have you here. Our favorite Hobbit. Good to have you here as well, Hannah. Lovely to see you. All right. All right, so let's get things started by bringing in Rachel. Hey.
Hi, JJ. How are you? Sorry, my son is having a little bit of a tantrum in the background. I apologize.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Good to see you. Good to have you back.
I'm just going to put my mic on mute for a second.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. I understand that there's a little bit of a tantrum going on there, but that's normal for young children. I know that I had my share of tantrums as a kid. I remember them. So let's get this started. I want to just dive right in. Nose dive right in to our conversation. And I'm going to bring Catherine in. And please, everybody, welcome Catherine to Effluvium. Hi.
Hello.
The sound is great. We didn't have to do a dry run.
Good. This is cool. I've never used this platform or anything. So hello.
Hello. And
hi, Rachel. Hang in there with the tantrums.
Okay. Yeah. Dad is with him. He'll be fine. But I apologize for the background noise.
No worries at all. It's nice
Love
to
it.
see your faces.
Great to see you too. Yes, I like that grunt. I love the library behind you. If I were there, I would be nosing through all of those books and seeing what you have there. I always do that when I go over somebody's house. I have to look at all of their books.
Oh, good. I have rooms of books. So please, if you ever visit, you are welcome to see all of them. I love books are like my friends. So I got lots of them in here.
Same here. The amount of books I have rival the amount of fragrances that I have in my collection.
Right.
So thank you so much for accepting our invitation to be part of this forum. I wanted to get started with a question I love to ask all of my guests, and I want to know about your earliest knowledge of a connection that you had with fragrance. I ask all of my guests this, to go far back and recall your earliest connection or connections to fragrance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess fragrance being like the product versus just a smell that I like milling about. I will say, I mentioned it in my book, my grandmother used to stay with us when she would visit from Montreal, and we had 4 kids, and this was in the Boston area, and I would donate my room for her, and because I had 3 brothers, and it was just her, she would stay in the girls' room. And after she would leave, I wouldn't want my mom to clean the sheets because I loved the smell of the pillowcase, and it was Lancome, face cream, and I just loved it. And when I got old enough to start sort of purchasing my own skincare, I absolutely looked to purchase that because it was a really nice scent. Mm-hmm.
Love that. And also you can even expand outward to not only like perfumes, but just earliest scent connections and experiences too. We'd love to hear those.
Yeah, well, I think also in my book, but the the color of my book is blue, but and most people know that it's not because of like Tiffany blue. It's actually because I love the smell of pool toys. So like, so that blue kind of represents to me that really searing chemical smell of like new toys, basically. I
Yeah.
mean, what child doesn't love that? Because it's associated with surprise and play. And for me, water, like I grew up on the water and I love swimming. And so, yeah, pool toys is a pretty rad smell for me.
I love that. Like the newness of the toys. Yeah, it's totally
Yeah.
the sort of like that fresh out of the factory kind of smell. When you're just opening a new toy,
Yeah.
and I know that those pool toys and have this very specific kind of plasticky,
Yeah.
kind of petrol-y kind of smell to them. I remember as a kid, before I learned how to swim, I'd have to wear like a tube. I'd have to have a tube on, and we'd call them the tubie.
Yeah.
And I remember that, still remember that specific smell of those,
Yeah.
inflatable
Mhm.
pool toys. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And I think I also just to share the natural side of those things too. When I was little, we used to have a house by the water, right? So Cape Cod, right? So we're on the Cape. And I remember driving from Boston to the Cape. And whenever we'd get there, you'd crack the windows open and everything smelled completely different.
Mhm.
And it was, it was either low tide or it was ocean or it was salt. And I still to this day love that when you take a road trip, doesn't have to be even by the water, but when you're like taking a road trip and then you kind of crack your windows or you open your door and it's like you settle into the smell there. It's very specific usually, and hopefully nature forward.
And I'm very familiar with that because I grew up in New England and not very far from the ocean. So that is a very strong association for me as well. So I wanted to ask you,
Mhm.
um, the journey that brought you to the projects that you've worked on, such as Nosedive and Odorbet, and the other types of projects that you worked on that are olfactorily oriented. What
Mhm.
was the journey that brought you there? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's a short and a long story. I think the kind of Reader's Digest again that's in the book that I'll sort of share quickly is
Sure.
I was doing a project where I was making art for an exhibition that was all about forgetting,
Mhm.
and I was just being cheeky, and I thought it would be fun to have in the installation a medicine chest that had different bottles that said, forget last night, forget 5 years ago, forget, etc.
Right.
And so what happened is I joked with a friend of mine over dinner, and he said, "Oh, you need to actually make the juice." And I was like, "Yeah, I really should." And so I started to make it, and he was the one who introduced me to Mandy Afdell. So I got, I
Mm.
tried to make the juice by myself, which was gross. And then I got introduced to the materials. Mandy is very generous with materials.
She is, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I learned about, very, very kind of a blunt learning about fragrance making, but an understanding of how beautiful some materials can be. So I got sort of hooked on that. But essentially after I worked, and it took quite a while to make that stuff. And after I worked with scent in my studio alongside painting and everything like that, I noticed my other work, my paintings and my drawings were actually becoming more abstract,
Right.
which I thought was extraordinary because I've always had kind of issues with making things too tight or too literal or things like that. So I equate the work that I do with olfactory to me loosening up my creative practice.
Mhm.
So by recognizing that, I'm like, I have to continue doing that. So for me, it's not about like pronouncing myself an olfactory artist and that's who I am. It's more
Mm.
like I'm an artist full stop. And I use scent in my practice to keep things obtuse
Mhm.
and keep things abstract and keep things open. So like the scent to me is so important in that it it does that, right? When you hang out with scent and smells and, that sense, it's almost like a muscle you're building, and it helps with your other creative practices, including my writing, painting, everything. So that's kind of, does that answer your question? Kind of like, that's why I do the things that I do. That's why I make sure that I'm dipping my toes in scent with a project here and there. Does that make sense?
It does.
But,
No, it really does. And what motivated you to start with Nosedive?
oh, yeah. Okay. So that's easy. So
Okay.
basically what happened after that 5 years of kind of messing around in the studio, making the scent, and seeing what happened with my artwork, I was so excited about it. And I was so also seeing the connection art historically of why scent is kind of bubbling up in zeitgeist. Like there's a reason for it, right? So I had written about it in a contemporary art theory, thingy. And then I thought, other creative people just absolutely need to have permission to do this. There's no reason why. And you don't have to be an olfactory artist. You can be a poet, you can be anybody, but you have to start thinking of scent as a tool in your art practice. That was where and so a group here in Portland, an little art group, institute, organization, invited me to do a talk. And so I did like a 3-hour workshop where I talked for 2 hours with slides, and it was me putting all of these kind of science, art history, basically making a case for why you should be using scent in your art practice. So that whole lecture, I got emails afterwards. I got people asking me for my slides. They said, I really, that would be really helpful for me. And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. Let me, but then I thought, I can't send slides because you don't get my talking. It won't make sense. And I have to share the message. So I was going to just do like a little zine or a pamphlet, and it really got big.
Yes.
And that, and that summer, I did that in January. And that summer I was invited to do, have you heard of Bread Loaf in Middlebury, Bread Loaf Writers Conference?
Oh yeah. Yeah. At Middlebury College.
Yeah. So I was invited to do that. Based on my art writing, like critical art writing and things like that. That's why I went there. I didn't go there for scent work or anything like that. But I went, and when you're there, you can pitch to publishers, which is cool. Like they have agents come and you get to sit down with them, and like literary agents. And I explained to them what Nosedive was. And I explained, I was giving my pitch to like 4 or 5 different people who were in the industry of publishing, and they all were like, they were like, I don't understand. Well, I don't know. And they all kind of like were perplexed. All the artists though, and the writers were like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And so I came back and I was so annoyed with the sort of, what the system of publishing is, that I was like, I'm just going to publish it myself because people need to know. And that's enough. Like, I don't need this to be fussy. I don't need to be like, this doesn't have to sell a lot of copies. I just want people to know. So that's why I self-published, and because it doesn't have a category that it was fitting nicely in, if that makes sense.
It is sort of its own entity.
Yeah.
And for those who are tuned in or watching the archive, what should they expect from reading Nosedive? What is it that they would get out of the experience of reading it?
Yeah, well, I've had some of the nicest comments from people about it. Like I loved one reader. They told me it was like I was talking to my sister for like for several hours about very important art things, and I didn't want it to end, like, so it's like an easy read. It's not technical. It's not fussy, and it's got a lot of jumping off points, so like, if there's something that interests you there, then you can go further, right? So like each chapter is its own sort of springboard, if you will. I could say it's a seed for another book, and if somebody reads it, go write that book, kind of thing, right? And there's resources in the back for, if you want to get materials, if you want to know about people doing things, and then every single chapter head has an exercise, like like a scent exercise.
That's
And
like one of my favorite parts, and I actually endeavored in a few of them.
yeah, like this one says, ask a trusted friend or relative what they think you smell like. Ask several people and make a list.
I love that.
So it's a very playful but informative. Academics probably hate it because I don't write like an academic, at least for that book, because
But
it's yeah.
But what's great about that, though, is that it may not have that sort of pedantry that the average reader may be intimidated with. That there is, it is very intelligent and rich and creative, but it does have an accessibility that I would encourage, like any fragrance enthusiast, to read it.
Thank you.
And for me, what was really inspirational about it is it kind of took me out of the sort of very structured expectation of how to examine scent, not only in the context of perfume, but also in the environment,
Right.
surrounding me, in the least likely of places. And to just tune into that in a very visceral, intuitive manner is like one of the most liberating things. I also love that you do spend a good part of the book discussing language and scent. As we know, to the average person, vocabulary and language to scent is so limited, and we have so few words at our disposal that is specific to it. So I just wanted to kind of ask you a little bit about some of your discoveries when exploring this topic as far as using a language for scent.
Yeah, so I have a very strong understanding that, appreciation that language is innate, right? Like some people,
Right.
a lot of people think it's acquired, like we have to learn something that somebody else says. But the truth is, we can make up our own words. We can
Yes.
have our own things.
I'm so glad you mentioned this. This is what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, and scent. The only way that you can elevate something like scent, especially if you're trying to make it an art medium, or if you're trying to sort of move it within the I don't want to say confines, because it's the perfume world is very rich, and there are confines there. So if you want to expand it, then there needs to be new vocabulary for folks, and you broaden your understanding about anything. The more words that you use. And so, and I love words, ergo my books.
Right.
As I was writing it, I was collecting words, new words I was learning, new scientific words, things like that. Because I also wanted to use them correctly in the book. And so I have this big, giant Excel spreadsheet going, and where I find the words. And then, also like struggling with myself, like, I don't want to call myself a perfumer. That's not true. And then I was like, but maybe. And I was having all these internal weirdness about what does it mean to be a scent maker? I'm not an olfactory artist exactly, but am I design? I mean, it was kind of a fun little debate to have internally. So anyways, big collection of words. Also noticing that we use valence terms normally to describe scent, right? We say it's okay, it's good, it's bad, and that's about it. And so trying to expand that, to like, oh, I think it's like a square fragrance could exist for somebody, or like something that feels a little round or bumpy, or I don't know. And so other words to sort of hit the rhythm of scent, like what is that? And so I think that's thrilling to think about.
I love the idea of a square fragrance, and that's the thing, in the absence of a language that has really developed to describe all things olfactory, we often turn to the language that is used to describe our other senses and the way that we perceive with our other senses. And I often find in my own perfume writing that a lot of it is based on visualization, sound and music, touch, and Yeah, did I just get all four? Wait, there's a fourth one. Taste to it. Well, taste and scent are so closely related. There's almost an interchangeability. It's like you can explain scent through taste and vice versa. But when you mentioned square, I immediately thought of a square wave. So if something, and the square wave can also be perceived as a texture. So there you go with touch.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you can use all of these different corollaries with other scents to describe what you're smelling, and it's so much fun. My favorites though is with music, because with the production, with the composition, producing a scent, putting it together, you're composing scent like you would compose a piece of music, and that you could use. There could be scales.
Yeah.
There could be, I was just doing some fragrance analysis for a perfumer last night, and I was given the accords, which are in a way sort of like the chords in music, and and putting those chords together, whether you get consonance or dissonance. I used the word glissando recently, like these. It's great to be able to do that, but
yeah,
there are there's existing language, but then also I love what is called the neologisms, the new words and phrases that you have. Do you mind if I share some with the?
Yeah.
Some of my favorites: air sculptor, aroma doodle. Hold on a second. Odoterrorism is interesting. There's actually been some perfumes that I would consider odoterrorism. Retronasal olfaction. Scent composer, sensibilities, SCENT, smellscapes. I think smellscapes is great.
Yeah.
Because you have landscapes, you have that visualization merging with smell, and then you can sort of imagine it as sort of a landscape, but built with scent. So great, so great. Rachel, did you have any questions that you had lined up for Catherine?
Thank you, JG. I do. I'm just so honored to be here with you both. Catherine, your work is amazing. And I hope everyone can go and read Nosedive, because yes, it is really engaging. It is not difficult to read, but I want everyone to know that the ideas in the text are amazing, and they can really change your point of view. There's a lot of big ideas in there to think about, and that you can think about for years and years on end and never really conclusion with. So it's a really beautiful balance of an engaging, I don't want to say easy to read, but fun to read book that deals with really big ideas, which is super great. And to me, I kind of see it as a part of this recent re-examination of sense epistemologically. Ever since the Enlightenment, we've really taken olfaction and said, oh, well, olfaction's not trustworthy. It's not a trustworthy way of knowing the world. And even like all those Enlightenment philosophers, they said, actually, the best thing we can have is a world that doesn't have a scent. That means it's clean, right? And so in the West, this is kind of, since the Enlightenment, the past few hundred years, that's really how our culture has dealt with scent. And unfortunately, that means we've lost a lot of our native scent culture in Europe and North America. So people are trying to reconstruct that, but also it does mean that a slight silver lining is that there's a lot of kind of space to work with. And I think your book gives us some amazing ideas. Like you were saying, someone could take almost anything in your book and run with it and write a whole new book. Yes. So one of my questions is, since you've written Nosedive, what is there one part of your book that you've kind of really gone with, or like what projects, like where have you gone since Nosedive? Was there something in Nosedive that you've really latched onto from there? Like what projects are you fascinated with now in terms of olfaction?
That's a really good question.
That's an awesome question, Rachel. Thank you so much. And that's really thoughtful and kind of you to say about the book. And I'm so glad you liked it. Yes, there is. I think there's stuff that I am working on, and I'm going to stay nice and obtuse because that's what I feel like doing. I'm not going to share exactly where I'm going, but basically this idea of scent building that muscle for you to be comfortable in a gray space, right? To be comfortable in the abstract. And what does that mean? What's going on there? I think that scent is chaos. It's totally chaotic, and it's extraordinary chaos. And it is that's where I'm focusing. That's really broad, but that's where I'm focusing.
Well, it sounds absolutely fascinating, and I can't wait to see whatever it is that you do next. And I hope everyone will follow Catherine on her Instagram, which is wonderful, very curated, very interesting. Yeah, lots of beautiful pictures and projects everyone should go follow her. And JJ, I noticed you were saying earlier about metaphor, like the metaphors we use to talk about olfaction. A lot of them come from music, from sound, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm curious because I actually have seen in several art spaces the combination of fragrance and music and visual art together. Those three things, I've seen that just kind of recently pop up. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, Catherine, if like how you see scent working in an art gallery space, if you have any thoughts about that or what you've seen lately.
Yeah, absolutely. So I recently just participated and collaborated with a musician and a performance artist, a dancer, and it was delightful. I think the mix is really magical. I think in general, our visually as a culture, we're exhausted. We're really exhausted. And so what becomes more important when we're exhausted visually is the invisible. So what's invisible? Music is invisible. Scent is invisible. So we're giving our eyes a rest. And that's kind of why I think a lot of it's going on and making sense, and people are kind of hungry for it. This particular project I did, in particular, the visual was the least important. And in fact, one of the most, it was weird for me because I have a background in visual, and then having to work in the space was like, oh gosh, like the visual is not important here at all. And so let's go. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question. The scent and touch, for example, too. Like, so for example, at the Venice Biennale and that whole kind of fine art world, like two back, there was a lot of like weaving and textured things that was important. So like, again, that thing that's been suppressed for so long, touch. Like, what is touch art? Touch art is weaving. It is things like that, right? Well, that's starting to bubble up as well because it's been repressed, and so has scent. And so now, and even in Documenta, like not only the mediums that have been repressed, but of course the peoples, the different cultures that have been, those are all showing up in the art world, right. So.
That's absolutely fascinating. Yeah. And I guess we would all probably encourage anyone that can get out and see as much contemporary art as you can, especially if it's, multidisciplinary.
Yes.
Is wonderful. And you can maybe scent will be included. That's much more likely today than it ever has been, I think, or at least for hundreds of years. And then I loved how you were talking about earlier at the beginning of our time here tonight about the very important and powerful smell of places. And I think it's interesting because I'm a high school teacher, so I work with a lot of teens. And when I talk with them about their scent experiences in life, a lot of them are synthetic. Like and that speaks to me, I think, about literally what our contemporary world is made of. Yeah. And especially because I live in a city, well, a small city, a big town, small city. And, there's not a lot of, there's a lot of concrete. There's a lot of, there's industrial manufacturing. There's, a lot of plastic in our homes. There's a lot of apartment dwelling, like without a lot of green space in parts of America. Yeah. And, I feel like our fragrances obviously are starting to represent this in our modern life. Our modern lives are quite synthetic.
Yes.
Right? So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that in terms of the smellscape of
Yes.
contemporary life,
Yes.
natural versus synthetic, anything like that?
Brilliant.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one can look at it and be like, ah, shucks. And then one can be like, yeah, that's real. They're noticing, right? Like, because even, for example, I went to, what is that cool thing that happened before COVID that I got to do? Essence in Milan. And I remember,
Oh, yes, yes.
yeah. And I remember walking around and I was like, what does Milan smell like? And I was like, oh my God, it just smells like cement and construction, because there's always like scaffolding and repair and that kind of thing. And it had that, I actually quite like that smell. It's like,
Yeah.
wet cement. So, I mean, I guess this, like, I guess is the Rachel is a question that, like, the changing sendscape and how maybe nature's not really, I mean, I think cement is part of nature, actually.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So we are us as humans, we're not separate from nature. So these smells that we make, pool toys, cement, all that, it's arguably nature too. So
Yeah, that's a great point, because I mean, technically, right, all synthetic materials are still, like, there's nothing on earth that's not of nature, right? So
exactly.
it's an artificial distinction,
Right.
Yeah.
but at the same time, experientially, when I say synthetic smell versus natural smell, at least individually, I think we all can have some broad sense maybe of, I think tires and gasoline versus trees and water, but maybe not.
I don't know. I think there's a more nuanced, I think a very nuanced conversation about that to be had, really, because you very philosophically, like, men and women's and people's are nature. We're nature. So what we make is nature. And it's, some of it's very destructive. But like, I think, have you seen, because there's always that debate too with scent, right? Like, there's a natural perfume or not natural. And that's kind of a silly conversation, because if you look at a banana, and you look at the chemical makeup of a banana, and you look at that list, it's huge. There's so many chemicals in a banana.
Oh yeah. There's all these different acetates, the same acetates
Yes.
that you would find in nail polish remover and in solvents.
Yes.
So that's a really good thing to bring up, because I think for those who are so focused on things being natural, it's almost like there's a willful ignorance of chemistry, of biochemistry, and biochemistry, that when you break it down to the more essential compounds, and you're going to find that those compounds are just as much found in exact chemical form in something that's synthetically produced as it is coming from nature. And also, another thing that can throw people off is that the feedstock, like take for example with perfume materials, with synthetics. So some synthetics may have petrochemical feedstock, which we can open up a whole can of worms about how, like, petroleum products were once, it's carbon, it was once living things, but some of the feedstock was actually living things, like the oils coming from plants are converted into synthetics. So that's why I agree with you. It's a very nuanced conversation, because where exactly is the line drawn? When does something go from being natural to synthetic?
Yeah, and I think it shouldn't so much be a conversation about natural versus synthetic. I think it needs to be a conversation about what would like maybe like intensity. So for example, so Johnson & Johnson spent millions of dollars to remove formaldehyde from baby sort of shampoo, baby bath, right? The math behind that and the science behind that is that a child would have had to take 65,000 baths in 2 weeks for them to have an effect, like for the actual for the actual formaldehyde to actually do anything. Okay, so that millions and millions of dollars could have been spent on, maybe a donation to a local charity. Anyways, and fragrance the type of fragrance that used in, say, like laundry detergent, because, you know, it has to stick with the hot temperature, like it has to stay scenty in that hot temperature. So that kind of fragrance, I do raise a flag on that one. I personally get like itchy from that. I use fragrance, I play with fragrance, I'm in fragrance all the time, but I can't use that because that, so that's legitimate, but you can't like extrapolate all scent based on your experience with laundry detergent, because it's specific. It's a specific composition of scent that has to be smelling in hot temperatures, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's just like a much more nuance, and I think our nose knows. Like we know, like when we smell something rancid, we know it's rancid, and we're not going to keep smelling it. We'll cover our nose right away. So,
and that originates from the earliest the earliest days of our evolution, that there are certain things that are meant to warn us. And that also is the reason why, even though I happen to really like very medicinal scents, like I love the smell of the way pharmaceuticals smell, the way things that are obviously also not edible and not potable, the way they smell very bitter. Like we have long associated bitter with being something to tread very carefully with. And that stems very far back. It's the same reason why we add mercaptan to natural gas. So, you know, our mind immediately thinks, you know, warning signal, like, you know, red flag. So our association comes from that. And I just think that that's fascinating too, that our very instinctual responses to scent can really shape what we are drawn to and what we're repelled with. But what I also think is really fascinating is when there's that sort of strange in between, that liminal space between being repelled and being seduced in scent too. And I think you discussed that a little bit also in your book as well. You know, just some examples of things where, you know, in perfume, if something smells like that little faint hint of garbage, or what, you know, different types of natural waste or poo, but there's just like that little bit, if it weren't there, it just wouldn't have that sort of, it wouldn't seem like a full perfume.
And that we're talking about indole when we say poo, right? So we're talking about
scatol. Scatol's like indole. Scatol makes indole blush, because scatol is the one where it's like, that's like rotted poo,
right? And I have smelled that. But just to say that, and this is where we have to bring some some humility to these things, because we're humans, and come on, we're humans. But indole, so it smells like poop, but also indole is the smell of death, by the way. And it is also like decay. It's also the smell of sex. So it's like all of those things in one. It's extraordinary, and it's all in the white flowers, right? So it's like, it's a cool little study. That
putrescine is another one that is I think is in all three as well. Like there's these weird amines, and what do they call, pyridines, and all these really offensive things. And that's why when you're a perfumer or a perfume chemist, you have to really get used to smelling things that are horrific in order to sort of break them down and distill them down to something beautiful. It's the only way. Like some of the perfume materials would just smell horrific on their own. But when reduced to such a small dilution, that's when the magic occurs. And I think that's what's so amazing about that. So very nice, very nice. So I wanted to ask you, there was one topic that you had brought up that I thought was fascinating, and we can segue into that. And you mentioned making sense as a grounding creative act in times of chaos. And that really resonated with me. I wanted you to just elaborate on that with us, and we can sort of discuss that.
Yes. Okay. I know. Like, how do we do this in Reader's Digest format? Here we go. Yeah,
we encourage it. We encourage a lot. This is the right forum for it. So don't worry about keeping it too concise. We're here to listen.
No, and I appreciate that. And I actually wanted to thank you before we even started. Like, wow, like we're so used to Instagram and like quick slogans and like 3 sentences. And so I'm like, oh, I get to talk for 2 hours. This is nuts. I love it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. So I think like, so, you know, we are in this really horrific, I think we're always as humans having a dilemma, always. But right now in our time, it's pretty bad. Like there's a lot of divisiveness and there's a lot of just a lot of scary things going on where a lot of us don't know where we're standing, where we're going, where we're headed or anything. So there's chaos, which is normal and natural. So why is making sense kind of grounding? Well, a couple things really. As I mentioned before, scent, it is chaos. It doesn't,
it doesn't necessarily behave. It doesn't have
well,
manners.
it's not linear.
Yeah.
It's not linear. It doesn't really stop and end. It has, none of us really know how to do it. I'm being very, very vague here. Obviously there's perfumers have know-how, but I mean, we take it for what it is. It's something that's invisible. It has rhythms that we try to kind of pick up on. Just like music, right? We don't know how to play music or anything, but we listen to the rhythms and we feel the rhythms and all this, you know.
Right.
And when you're spending more time with these invisible things, right? We're growing those muscles, the comfort level of being in the gray space, of being in the not knowing. We're getting really comfortable with that. And we're breathing. We're breathing deep. That's how you smell something. And that's a grounding thing. You're breathing, you're smelling, you're deeply inhaling. So staying comfortable in that liminal space of not knowing, and it's kind of a playful space where it's not threatening that you don't know, like because the opposite of that is going on, right? Like you're either this or you're that. You're here, you're there. There's no and there's no smushy space. You have to stand up for something, or you have to, you know, or you're terrified of this thing happening. There's just a lot of divisiveness, right? Like there's a lot of polarity, there's a lot of divisiveness. And so scent is this awesome space where there isn't divisiveness. There's nothing hard-edged about scent at all. It's really special. It's extraordinary like that, I think. And so that's what I mean. Does that make sense? It does ish.
It does.
It does. To me, because so much, and again, like think about this conversation we're having. This is not normal. Like we're usually needing to take a quick amount of time, kind of start and finish the conversation, or make sure you like put out your thing very clearly, and then you retract and you move away and you do something else. But like scent is just this thing that just permeates everything, and you have to like digest it in layers and sit with it and be okay not knowing what it is. That's kind of the joy. And that's why there's so many writers writing about scent, right? Because it's like this fun space to kind of jump around in your brain.
It's so interesting. Something that you pointed out is that, you know, we don't know how to do it, right? This is a practice that, you know, 1,000 years ago, if you wanted something fragrant, you had to make it yourself at your home, right? You had to go pick the flowers yourself. You had to, unless you were very, very, very wealthy, right? So a lot of people used to make fragrances, or even just, you know, when you would make they might make your own soap at home, or whatever it is you would use to scent your house, you might have to do it at home. And in some places in the world, people still make their own olfactory materials for their own houses, or they have the manufacturing process. Perhaps it's one family in town that does it, but the manufacturing process is not opaque. We're not cut off from the way from learning about how it's done. Whereas the industry today, and has been for quite a long time, it's so professionalized,
right?
You know, you have to have a chemistry degree, right? Like the industry itself wants to keep everything a secret. They do not want to know what's in the bottle, right? And so it's like a language of metaphor. So we have the experience, right? Which we bodily feel, and then we have all these like metaphors that comes from the industry, and sometimes they fit and sometimes they don't. And it's an odd way to experience one of our 5 most important senses, you know. because
Yes.
it's all around us all the time, right? But we don't know how it's made. We don't know, we're
Right.
not taught a vocabulary, just like you say in your book.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things I would add to, there's two other things too, why in chaos and these like difficult times, why scent making, or just generally like focusing in on scent. Scent is a connector, right? We actually, in the past, they've used incense, right? Like if we're all going to sit and worship, we're going to smell something. That actually connects us together, just like music has, right? Like, then there's that. So it's a connector. And also, by the way, besides great perfume, we also like to smell each other. Like we just do. We don't talk about it. Nobody talks about it. That's weird. But it's true. So like we actually subconsciously, without thinking of it, we want to smell each other.
And that's totally, and that's the reason why there are so many things in perfume that suggest the smell of bodies.
Yeah.
And that enhance it, like things like, the animalics and the costus and the cumin and all of these things, because they kind of echo that. Yeah.
And we register each other with our smells. We really, really do. It's not like new agey or weird. It's like we actually really do. I mean, we can smell someone's anxiety. We can smell their fear. That's actually a real thing. So
And
and
oh, I'm so sorry.
No.
And even it's theorized that we can smell health. Like we can smell if somebody's healthy, as these, biological beings that want to procreate, that we're detecting health through the way that somebody smells.
Yes.
It's fascinating.
And I wrote that in my book. And again, I don't have a degree in smelling people's health, but I have 3 children and I can tell when something's off, and I can tell when something's off with my husband, and I can tell. It's like, it's just instinctual. There's not a word for it. Maybe we should make some, but there is that thing. So, and as humans, when we're dysregulated and having anxiety, the best thing for us to do is to connect with each other, like to hug each other, to stand next to each other, hold hands like that. And that involves touch, scent, sound, all of it. So
it's interesting that you say that, Catherine, because I was just reading recently about some of the earliest practices of the earliest doctors, and I'm sure this comes from practices even before official medicine, but to diagnose patients, they would smell their pee or taste their bodily fluids, or smell their skin, lick their skin, stuff like that. And it's because that's exact, and it was modern medicine that said, oh, no, we have to visualize that through charts, data, blood draws, etc. We have to visualize that information, because the nose is not a trustworthy way of gathering information.
Which, right? I love that you just brought that up, because his name I'm forgetting, but I will remember it before we finish. He's a scientist in Israel, and he does olfactory work. And he was talking about like AI and scent, and where that's going, because there is that whole, Google's having a whole big thing of it, and and it's very exciting, and wow, and woo. And anyways, and what he was saying was, in the future, and maybe not in our lifetime, but it'll be where we go sit on the toilet, and there will be an olfactory reader.
Wow.
And it will read your urine to say something's off. And that's a scientist working right now that can see that happening. As soon as they get the sensors working correctly, I think it's probably the same computer problem that we had years ago, where like to save something, it would have like 3 refrigerator size things to do the work. But that's the prediction that he's having. So same thing, right?
Thinking of all the things that could detect, like, bladder cancer, kidney infections, and, all different kinds of things that you can pick up, that it could pick up from urine, because urine can be sort of like, a cross section of what's going on in the body. That's really amazing. Yeah. I wanted to just turn over to the chat very briefly. I've neglected it. Clandestine Laboratories, Mark Sage says, he's a pal of ours. He's been on Effluvium. Texture and fragrance is underrated. I agree. And a lot of fragrance writers and reviewers don't really use the texture. I just used it today for my review on Tubulus Cumanel. I feel like it's chewy. And
Yeah.
chewy to me is like a texture. It's like, it just feels like if you were to bite into it, it would be chewy. You're so right about that. And he also mentions the issue with natural versus synthetic is complicated by the fact that aroma chemicals aren't generally 100% pure. Odors of the same chemical can vary wildly depending upon source synthesis, etc. And laundry fragrances contain hydrophobic chemicals that have an affinity for skin and fibers. And those the hydrophobic chemicals and they also have like these heavy molecules, and that's why they just don't seem to go away. And I feel like some of the things that were developed for more functional fragrance, like laundry detergents, are now starting to pop up in like modern perfume, because people want something that will last and will linger and will stick around. Yeah.
I don't love that, but yeah.
Not a fan of it either.
No.
Not at all. It throws me off. And that could, open up a whole other conversation. And I feel like it does something really weird with the development curve of a perfume, because, it will open with this fanfare and a showstopper and everything's front loaded and beautiful. And then it just sort of like plateaus for the longest time with this, like, here we go again with like a metaphor, like this sort of like din of these aroma chemicals for hours. And those are the ones that just stick. Like I've worn things like that, and I'll take a shower and it's still there.
Yeah, I don't love, I don't like at all. I think I read about Too Pristine. What's that?
I think that was from earlier. That's why I was like, oh, darn it. I should have interjected with the chat. I think we were talking, he is referring to what we were chatting about a little bit earlier about, the ideas in our society of being kind of clean and antiseptic and not having any kind of like animal magic to ourselves. Every creative act is grounding. You're projecting yourself into the outer world. Very nice. And it's an instinctual verification of safety. Referring to what we were chatting with a little while ago, a moment ago. Very well then. I think at this time we're going to do just a brief intermission. We do like a 1-minute intermission, and then we'll move on to part 2 at the top of the next hour.
Cool.
All right.
A bio break or something?
Yeah, if you need a bio break, hey, I've been known to do it. It's 1 minute if I'm fast.
No, that's okay. I'm good.
All right, we're going to sign off for a bit, and folks, just stay tuned. We have 17 people tuned in. Thank you, everyone, for joining the Effluvium live stream, and we'll be right back. All right, and we are back, and we're going to get started with, we're right at the top of the hour, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it is hour 2 of Effluvium. So it looks like the chat, we have 19 people who are tuned in currently. I encourage those who are tuned in to just mention that you're here. Let us know if you have a scent of the day, a thought of the day, if you have any questions, or if you're curious about what we've been discussing, if you want to pick Catherine's brain or any three of us here, we want to hear from you. I want to see a more active chat here, because we do have 18 people tuned in. So don't be shy. Don't be afraid. It's okay. We're all here together for the same reason, because we love to smell things.
So if I could ask a question, if you don't mind, Catherine, what perfumes are, well, first of all, how do you like to scent yourself? I'm just making an assumption that it's perfume. How do you like to scent yourself? What olfactive products or materials are around your house or on your, on your
Yeah.
beauty, in your beauty stand, or like, what do you like to smell around you, like in your home, on yourself
Yeah.
these days? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I've never actually, of all the times that I've been writing and talking about scent, I never talk about that. So thanks for asking that. I like, I think hair products are really important for me because I have a lot of hair. So it holds in my hair. So smelling things in my hair is really important. I actually oftentimes will spray perfume in my hair because it stays a little longer. I currently, one of my jobs is I'm a licensed clinician. I do therapy with kiddos and things. So I can't really exactly scent myself for that so much. I do scent my office though. I have some like nice woody sort of mixes that I've made in the studio. Cool. Scent of the day.
Yeah, I just bring them up just you don't.
No, that's cool. Sorry. No.
I'm sorry to throw you off.
No, that's okay. Yeah. So I use woody sort of scents in my office. In my house, I make candles myself. And so I do have those kind of like burning in the house. And I have, as I mentioned, I have a perfume collection. So I got at least once a day, I'm putting something on. So.
And do you want to tell us a little, because I've noticed your candles on your Instagram and they look amazing. Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, and I'll send you both some for as a thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so those I just started doing a while ago. Like I honestly, again, just messing around in my studio and just enjoying myself. And I used to give them just for gifts for people. And then my husband was like, these are really nice and you should try to sell them. And then I got them in a beautiful shop here in Portland, Perfumery. Actually, Perfumery sells my book too. So if folks want to go on their website and get my book, they sell my candles and my book. And Tracy is super rad. And she carries my candles. Nice. And yeah, that I'm also doing other things with that to come. You will see and hear and smell hopefully soon. There's other stuff coming, but that's a really slow burn project. That's not like a big, like, I don't even market it really. So yeah, but that's that. And then, yeah, I just absolutely love niche perfume, but I also just absolutely love some pretty janky stuff too. Like I'm all over.
Tell us about the janky stuff. Janky. I like the janky.
Well, what was I trying? I mean, janky. I mean, like it again. I'm kind of coming at it from like not just like a perfume thing. Like so, for example, like I have a thing of Johnson's baby oil because it's I don't really use it. I'll put it on once in a while because I'm like that's just a smell I love. It's super special.
Super nostalgic for me.
Yeah. Exactly. But like I have a 17-year-old daughter and like she gets all of these funky like body sprays and I'm like, I can get into that. Like the ones that smell like a suntan, like Brazil butter, whatever that is. It's like, okay, I can do that for a minute. I can't for very long actually because it is kind of
it's overpowering.
Yeah. Like, oh my God, Trader Joe's just put out one and she's like wearing it and it smells very nice on her. But again, I put it on and I feel like I don't think that's working for me and my aesthetic.
Well, I was going to recommend to you, because you said you love like the smell of low tide and all the ocean scents. I'm the same way. I love the reel of the ocean. I love all the smells of the ocean, even the ones other people are like, ooh, no. I love it all, just like you. And there's an amazing fragrance called Silence the Sea by Strangelove. The brand is Strangelove NYC.
Oh, is this some Silence the Sea? Did Christoph do this?
Yes, Christoph did it. And it's brilliant. And I adore it. I wear it at home all the time. And I like some people that have smelled it on me, like friends and family, have been like, maybe don't wear that to work, because it's very low tide. Like it's very
It's
It's a
pretty
work of art.
intense. Yeah.
It's a work
Yeah,
of art.
so Christoph, he's he's a friend, and he's also like one of my favorite perfumers who actually translates things. So I'm just going to share this. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of people who call themselves artists and they're not. And there's a lot of people who call themselves perfumers and they're not. And it's like there's a few that just really do it both beautifully. And the thing to me that really speaks to, like, and I'll use Christoph as an example, is there's a translation that happens with his work where it's not an illustration.
Yes.
And that's just like when you're an artist and you're a painter or whatever. If you're just making an illustration, you're an illustrator. You're not really an artist doing the painting. I know that's kind of a fussy conversation, but it's worth having because I think he does a beautiful job of translating things. Like I actually have, because you asked me, so I brought a couple down here in my, so like Kiki Smith is one that he did.
Yeah, I love that.
I love it because I love Kiki Smith's work, and I can actually, when I smell it, I'm like, I know the conversation he had with her. Like I know her work very well, her visual work, and the scent has really translated that, if that makes sense. Right?
100%. Yeah.
Right? Like some perfumers might have just illustrated it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he has a really good knack of that translation, which is so cool. And then another one I have here, and you guys are going to have to help me out. And this is where, like, I stay sort of ignorant of the whole perfume. I buy the stuff, I support the folks, but I don't read anything. Like, I don't read reviews. I don't do anything. I just have my own experience. And so I don't remember the name of the maker of this, but it's called Blow Up. Woo.
Oh, hold on a second. Let me zoom you in so the folks can see.
Yeah, Blow Up. I think is it Rabbit Perfumes? Maybe.
I don't know that one.
Oh, dude. Okay, so this is lovely. This is a series that they did, and they're all movies. So Blow Up is a film.
Oh.
And Blow Up, they did also one with the lobster. And oh my word, this Blow Up. So can I read you the
Please.
description?
Yeah.
Please do.
Because it's like so fun. And it's teasing and it's playful, of course. And it says, wasted days, green fairies. Life is abstract, dirty, sex, snap, snap, drive, a joint, snap, snap, oil paint ejaculating on old canvas, her leaves tickled in the wind, dark room, silhouettes drown in alcohol, the tennis of reality and fantasy. So that's really kind of pointing to the film, but it also, the scent is spot on. Great.
I love it.
Really good translation of those words and the movie. And so bravo to this. And I feel terrible that I don't know the artist really.
We can all look it up. It's okay.
Rabbit Perfumes, I want to say. Does that not sound familiar to you guys?
No, I've never heard it. But thank you. So now I'm going to go look them up and smell their stuff. So thank you.
Yeah.
So can I just make a quick announcement to a dear supporter of the channel, Nick S. I have banned you accidentally. We had a troll, and when banning that troll, I accidentally banned you. It was not intentional, and I was sort of scrambling to try to unban you so that you could be part of the conversation again. My apologies to you. That was my mistake. You're very much welcome here. I'm just sort of sorting that out behind the scenes here. So sorry.
Oh boy. Exciting. Trolls.
They happen on YouTube. Yeah, they happen more often than we'd like. But I've actually heard. So you mentioned that what was the name of that house? You mentioned it's
Moth Rabbit.
Moth and Rabbit. Yeah, I've heard of them. I'm not too familiar, but
Mark Buxton is the perfumer.
Now I know him.
Okay.
Yeah. Very
that
cool.
sounds right. He's great. Like he does those kind of interdisciplinary, like artistic kind of projects. So that totally makes sense.
And there's another one.
Oh, let's get you back into close up here. This is a house that I was very curious about. I've read some great things about it. Tell us about this one.
Okay, I'm going to tell you in my non-perfume way. Yes, exactly. Moth and Rabbit. Thank you, Keith. This is Hima Jamo, and I love the whole collection, And I believe this is a female perfumer as well. And honestly, I got it because it smells like a lot of the things I make in my studio. But, and it's much more like refined and like, well, like really like, very well sealed and done. And I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like it's what I mess around with the same notes in my studio. And so they've just done it really beautifully. So I enjoy that. And then in honor of, I think, your last guest, and also my family loves this fragrance, Night Flower.
Yes.
Oh my God. Like my husband went and surprise bought this for me, and like he wears it, and my little 12-year-old boy wears it. Like they love it.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, this is a very sexy fragrance, my friends.
Yes.
Like,
but it's for the whole family.
It's like family fragrance. Yeah.
That actually, I was thinking of adding as third from Eris Parfums, because I already have Ma Bet and Mix with 3 X's. Ma Bet is not only sexy, but that's raunchy. One of my favorite raunchy fragrances, and I have a lot of them. That's another really good one. Yeah, for sure. So you have some great choices there. I'm really impressed.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very choosy. As much as I like some pretty daft smells, I'm pretty choosy.
Yeah. Well, I did a whole 2 weeks on drugstore fragrances. I was doing.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I was doing. I'd like Revlon Ciara and Sandon Sable and British Sterling. Yeah, I was doing reviews on drugstore fragrances for a couple of weeks, because there's something to be said about how much of a part of, just the culture of the middle class, the working class and the middle class, that was the accessible fragrance. And it's interesting because a lot of those have pretty much, you don't really have, just as we've seen the middle class kind of squeezed out, that whole, tier of fragrances is starting to get kind of squeezed out as well. You don't really have, it seems like everything is sort of like, everybody aspires to have like a department store fragrance or a luxury fragrance, but there's really something to be said about those classics. And, they weren't really made, a lot of them weren't really made with like quality ingredients, but that begs the question, what does it mean to be a quality ingredient in perfume? Like how do we decide if it's a good quality or a bad quality, a good quality fragrance versus a bad quality fragrance? What do we use as parameters for that? What do you think about that? The concept of judging perfumes for quality.
What do I think about judging? That's not cool.
What do you think about judging? Are you a judgy person?
I think if I can draw a parallel, because again, I'm not like the perfume world. I'm very much not in that way. I will draw a parallel to the wine world or the art world, by the way. Okay, so with the art world, people don't know, they have the same problem where they can't really draw the line because they feel like they don't know enough, or they feel like they don't, so there's this false sense of, I can't have an opinion about this. But you can, you absolutely can, but nobody's giving you the permission to, because there's all these, art critics and there's these scent critics and there's a thing. And like, I don't know anything about it is your default, right? Which is, I think we want to generally change that, right? And I think I love that you said that you did a week of drugstore fragrances. It's lovely, because then that's giving people who like that, like the vocabulary for talking about that. It's the same with art. I absolutely think there's really shitty art. I really think there's really bad art. And I think some of it is bad art that has been elevated to an extent that's a shame, because it's like, come on, like, how is it that no one can see that this isn't so I don't know, and what does that mean? What is bad? Bad? I mean, it's a good question. I think let's move this into this conversation of perfumery code of ethics. Shall we?
Yeah, I think that makes for a really good segue, because
okay, good. Yeah. So like,
Because I would have to bite my lip if we start talking about what I think is bad, and
I
it's
know
probably a good
that.
idea.
I know, and I still would love to hear that, by the way. But I think
Well, we have there's a backstage option. If we chat for a
okay,
little bit afterwards, we can
we
dish
can
it.
dish about that. Good. Yeah, no, because I think again, our nose knows. Like we intuitively know, like, ooh, like that does something feels off there. I don't have the words for it, but something's
Right.
off. Something's off. So if I had to be judgy, I would say like a bad fragrance are those fragrances that copy the other fragrances, right? Like that just
Yeah.
fully, blatantly, without apology, and with just riding on the coat strings of stupid marketing, right? Like
Right.
where there's no there. There's just like, let me just, that feels uncouth and bad.
Yeah.
Like that's like not cool. That's really what I would call a bad fragrance. But otherwise, like everybody has such a subjective taste. Like if you go into the wine sort of world, which people, decades ago, people would be like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what a good wine is. But once you start smelling and tasting and you're like, oh, now I can taste it.
Mhm.
It's kind of like that age old, like, well, it's pornography. It's pornography when like, like it's like this like unspoken, like, well, it's this thing. It's the same thing, like something that's bad when you're like, that's exploitative, or it's like, I don't know, it just doesn't taste good. It feels like it's a waste of calories, a waste of money. I don't know. That's all I can think of as bad. Is that helpful? I don't know.
No, it is. It is. It's now I'm just thinking about bad taste. Now I'm thinking from bad.
I know. Well, what is taste? Oh, that's a whole.
Like one person's idea of the creme de la creme may be another person's idea of bad taste, and I think it could speak to different kind of like. It could be based on culture and class and education and exposure to certain things and value systems. Like, people argue that it only, you must have like certain education or understand fine art and fine literature and all that sort of stuff. I don't know. I'm just
Okay.
trying not to.
Ooh.
Yeah, because it's
okay. Can you hear me okay?
Oh,
there you go.
Yeah, it was kind of going in and out briefly.
Yeah, just for a second there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I missed what you said because it was like
I couldn't hear it either. Yeah, just the last part.
Oh, me or wait, who? Me?
JJ. Yeah.
Oh no. Can you hear me okay?
I can now.
Okay, good. It wasn't anything important because I was going off on a tangent.
Okay.
Well, I think it's so interesting, and this might have very well been what you just said, JJ, but I think it's interesting the difference between, personal taste, which of course we all have, and just like you said, Catherine, it's all about, upbringing, culture, all these background things that play into it. But then there's also like the material aspects of a production, whether it's a work of art, whether it's a work of music, whether it's a work of fragrance. There are material conditions behind these things. And I think there is maybe where we can start to talk about quality in just a little bit. And I think that's where the ethics in perfumery at least has stepped in a little bit to say, hey, when you're thinking about buying perfume, you might want to think about where the material sourced, what's really in the bottle. Is the company lying to you or misguiding you? Are the people who are actually like hands on the ground working it, are they being treated fairly? Like these are material aspects of quality that I think can be judged. And at least we can make ethical decisions about them. And I'm so glad that Christophe Landemiel started all this and started to shine some light into the industry, because the industry doesn't want us to know what's going on, right? Correct. And I don't do you want to, I know that you've signed the ethics in perfumery?
Yes.
I imagine. Do you want to talk about why you did it and what led you there and how you heard about it? And
yeah, absolutely. So so part of what I do whenever I'm making art, I usually write a lot about it, right? And so when I started to make scent in my art, and I started to, again, this is just what I do with everything. I just like overdo it. I research it, I write about it. I'm like 360 degrees around it. And I forget how I got into it, but when I was thinking about like, so the very first fragrance that I did, it got reviewed actually by Luca Turin, and he liked it, and it was really special. And I was like, whoa, dang, I guess that's cool and good. But then I started looking into what does it mean to make a fragrance, and then again going down this rabbit hole. And I learned that there's no copyright for fragrance. And I thought from an intellectual standpoint, I thought that was interesting. Like, why wouldn't there be? And from an artistic standpoint, I thought, well, that's not fair. Like, that's not cool. Like, somebody creates something, they should have, someone should at least pay homage to this person who's worked really hard, and yet they're invisible. So fragrance artists, perfumers are invisible. So what the heck? And so I wrote a very long piece about copyright and perfumery a while ago. And then I'm friends with Christoph. And so, when he did the perfumery code of ethics, of course I signed it, and was, because he has a much more broader view of the whole landscape of the issue. So yeah, I totally signed it because I'm on board for those reasons, right? So these people who are mostly from that standpoint of the maker, and the only way you can sort of elevate something to an art format or an art whatever, you need to have that understanding of the maker and that whole process. And if you're making the maker invisible, then it's not going to be, perfume will not be art if you don't do that, if you don't really respect that. And so that's why I stand behind it. And I think everyone should be. Yeah.
I think that's something that's so missing from perfumery is, I feel like it's starting to get there where the perfumer is an artist, and you cannot produce great art without the individual human mind, like creating, like, because I feel like some of these companies are like, oh, well, we can just have a computer algorithm that just like takes surveys of what notes people like, and just does everything without human hands, just to cut costs and stuff. But that's not going to work, right? Because you can't have development of an art without human ingenuity, human minds, trying new things, experimenting, having that, whatever it is that, I don't know. I don't know what makes an artist an artist. I don't know where that creative spark comes from. If I did, I'd be a deity. But like, it's, it comes from somewhere, right? And that personhood needs to be respected, and respected financially, respected legally. And it's maddening that does not happen in olfactive art.
Yeah. Well, right. And, and I think it's funny. Some perfumers would actually say, no, I'm not an artist. And they have, they have said that in the past. I remember reading some articles about that where they're like, no, I'm not an artist. And some said, absolutely, I'm an artist. So there's, within that landscape, even there's two different ways of looking at it. And I think the ones that say, no, I'm not an artist, is because they are working collaboratively with these companies that, let's be real, they need to make a profit. And that's where, yes, they rely on the spreadsheets and the algorithm and the thing. And like, okay, but that's not fine art. That's fine. So yeah, it's a really interesting, important conversation to have, right? Because we
have Sweet Milk Care. You all report on the ethics of perfumery. I'll report on the ethics of perfume reviewing.
There is, but if you sign the perfumery code of ethics, actually, if you go look that up, and maybe you can put that in the notes, the perfumery code of ethics, you can see that there's actually perfume writers who, and by the way, I like your point, Sweet Milk, because if you sign that, then you are agreeing to the Perfumery Code of Ethics, which is not to provide BS,
Yeah.
which is not to mislead the reader in any way based on, marketing from companies and such. So it covers that. So yeah.
It is I've pledged it, and there are a number of other content creators, reviewers, and writers who've pledged. It is not just perfumers. Rachel has as well. So you can be assured that there are some of us out there who do value transparency.
Yeah.
And there are going to be a lot of YouTube content creators who have a different agenda. They have a business agenda, and they want to conceal, deceive, a little bit of jiggery pokery, if you will, a little bit of duplicitous behavior, because it's easier to make money that way. And when people start to put money and, clout number two, but money first and then clout and then whatever else they want, whatever their egos want, then they'll throw away transparency, and they won't be upfront about the intentions for what they say and how they promote or give reviews. By pledging to the perfume code of ethics, you are promising that if you do, say, for example, if you are getting promotional products from a business, whether it may be deemed a gift or if there may be an expectation for a sponsorship, that you must be transparent about it. Like even, for example, our friend Joseph Cartana, and you could see it in real time with our Effluvium stream. He's like, oh, well, if you like it so much, I'll send you a bottle. And I said right away, that's wonderful. I'm so grateful for that. And I will make sure to make clear that if I discuss that fragrance with that bottle, that I will point out that this is a gift. And I did that with my most recent review. And unfortunately, it is not always so with content creators, but by signing that pledge, you are committing to that, and also committing to not BSing about what you're smelling and how you're smelling it.
Well, and I just want to clarify something. Again, I don't follow perfume reviews at all. I'm sorry. I do that on purpose and by design so that I can just be like my own ignorance is bliss kind of person. But I think the thing that I like about perfume reviewers is sometimes they're very creative and imaginative with how they review things. And I think that should stay and not be considered bullshit, right? Like that's like this really cool thing that happens when you smell a fragrance and you're kind of like having a moment with it. Like that's still very valid, I feel like, but not saying like, this is a, has the rose to blah, 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 and it doesn't. Like, that's not cool. But if you want to talk about how it feels like roller skating when you were in 8th grade, like, that's cool. Like, do that.
Right.
Please. That's
my favorite part of the reviewing. I'll get into the analytical stuff too, but I always try to make sure, and I try not to assert that I know exactly what's in something because I don't have the formula in front of me. But if I detect something, I'll say like, I'm convinced that there is such and such in this, or I would be fooled. You know what I'm saying? Like I would say something that suggests that I don't know for sure, but it smells like it to me. And that includes like the raw materials too, I think that's a responsibility with businesses. There was one brand that I saw recently, and they said that they included vetiver from Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
And I did some research, and there is there aren't any growers in Dominican Republic, but there are in Haiti. And I found it kind of strange how they decided to choose Dominican Republic. It was just very strange to me. And I did the research, and there's actually no growers in Dominican Republic. So to just make sure that, if you are discussing the origins or the provenance of your materials, that they are actually coming from said place.
So I wanted to bring this up and to tie it back to Nosedive for a hot second, because we're talking about perfume and art. And you said, Rachel, like, I don't know what an art, like I could, on page 93, I have a little graph.
Oh, I'll open up my book as well.
And that is my sort of like, it's between perfume and art. I've actually put them together, one perfume on one side, art on the other side. It's like, what's perfume, what's art, right? It's a playful little graph, but it makes sense to you'll, you know, that, okay, that's being art, and okay, there's perfume, and there we go. So, and in case you want to, you know, revisit that one for thoughts on art and perfume.
That's awesome. I left my copy in my classroom because I use a lot of your exercises with my students and they love
You
them.
do?
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to hear more offline about that. That's so cool, Rachel.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome.
We'll chat.
This is my favorite. Perfume commentary is marked by enormous amounts of freewheeling discourse and opinions that might benefit from adding public education. Don't I know that?
Yeah. And you're making public education, so thank you for that. That's cool.
You're welcome, and thank you for being a part of it. And then that is compared with art. The art world has a tight circle of critique and dialogue, which could use some of the freewheeling interpretive discussions from the perfume world.
Does that make sense?
It does make perfect sense,
right?
To get out of just sort of like the you know, high level headiness of it and kind of bring it back down to earth, down to the grounding it.
Right. Which perfume critics and critics, they do have permission. They feel like they have permission to write about in any way that they want to, which is, I'm saying in that commentary, I'm saying that's an awesome thing, something that the art world needs and the art world doesn't have. And so I'm jealous from the art world. I'm jealous of the perfume critics because there aren't art critics really anymore. I mean, because people are too afraid to make a statement or anything, and they shouldn't be. They shouldn't.
That could bring us to a whole other tangent about expressing and critiquing and being careful about the language that we use. And it's a very sometimes it can feel like walking on eggshells now because we want to make sure that we're not treading into territory that may be deemed, you know, sensitive or offensive. But we still need to challenge sensitivities and to do a little bit of disobedience and offending as well, to kind of to bring light to other aspects of the human condition. Because if we're always trying to protect everybody's sensibilities and sensitivities and fear and safe spaces and everything, then nothing can be challenged.
So I'm gonna just do a tangent.
For sure.
Book front. Have you read the book The Dumbing Down of America?
I've heard of it, but I've not read it.
Oh, Rachel, as a teacher, you must read it.
Okay, cool.
There are two professors that have been teaching college for like 20 years, and they or maybe even more, but they talk about the change in what you're talking about, JJ, like that idea of like, we need to challenge each other to understand the human condition. This is Bodhi. Hi.
Wait, close up so we can see.
Oh, hi, Bodhi. Here, come say hi. Say hi.
Oh, that little face. I see little face.
Sorry. He's been sitting on the lap, keeping me calm. But yeah, that book is really, it has some excellent points around the importance of having uncomfortable moments with each other, not for sake of like, if that uncomfortable moment is to understand one another better. And if you close it down by saying, I can't even go there, then that's a disservice to connection, which is what we really all need to do.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to read this.
Yeah, we can email you if you need. Yeah.
That's just like the book that I'm reading, Coddling of the Mind, which has been criticized, but I think it was it had a lot of salient points in that one as well. And I think that it's just important to balance having a sensitivity and being empathetic, but not using empathy as sort of like a weapon or a cop-out or a way of kind of hiding from you know, the reality of life and what the challenges are in life.
That's the book. I'm calling it Dumbing Down. It is that book.
Oh, it's the same book. Yeah.
That's awesome. Like, I do that, by the way.
I have the book here. I have been reading it slowly because I sometimes, the coddling of the American mind. Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt. Yes.
Yeah. And that speaks to, so the space that book is talking about, like that space of, you know, this, nuanced discussion, conversation, dialogue. When you have dialogue, you need to have that comfort with gray space, with that liminal space, that abstract space, like not having an answer space. And again, that's what the scent supports.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It would be very cool to see how that can sort of bridge certain dialogues that are being cut off otherwise.
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm seeing. We were talking about the polarization, and people are seeing things in binaries now, like you're either oppressed or you're an oppressor. You are this or you're that, and there's that kind of middle. And what are the ways that art, including olfactory art, what are the ways that we can bridge that together and kind of bring us back to our shared humanity, because we're all humans. We're, even though there's one aspect of us that is tribal, we're also humans that have advanced so much intellectually, and also with such power that we have in our intelligence as a species, that we can transcend a lot of that tribal behavior. Even though it's like intrinsic to us, we can surpass it, and that's something. It's powerful to consider all the possibilities that can come from that. And I'd like to think that I do that in my work as well, because often, like in my own perfume writing, I'm challenging perceptions of what sexuality is through scent, and what is sensual and what is carnal, what is considered decent and indecent.
Right.
And they end up being some of my most popular reviews.
Great.
That's awesome.
because I end up talking about things that probably other people are not as likely to talk about in their perfume reviews. Like I go there with some of them.
Good.
Yeah, but it's fun. It's fun.
And that's, I think, bringing it back. Sorry to interrupt, but just real quick, bringing it back to what Catherine is saying about having that like common square, common good, where different. You have to have those differences of opinions, and you have to have that gray area and that difference. Yeah. Just like JJ, that you were doing in your work, is to bring those perspectives that not everyone shares, so that we can learn together. Right? It's great. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that's greatly lacking right now, which is the thing that is so human, is art. Like an appreciation for art, period. Full stop. Like it's kind of missing. And so and art and beauty and all of that stuff, it's highly necessary, even though even though we're pulled to think, well, if you're an artist, like if you're not making art about what's going on in the world right now, it feels like, but you don't have to illustrate what's going on. And in fact, we need more art. We need more beauty. We need more of that, because if we make more of that, then we'll have tendencies towards that. Right. So we have to hold on to it with dear life. And it's hard as an artist and a thinking and a sensitive human. It's really hard to stick with, I'm going to do art. I'm going to do this. And I'm here to say, like, it is the most important thing right now.
I am inclined to agree. And I'm also inclined to agree that it doesn't necessarily need, I know that there's the argument that art is inherently political, but there's a way to make a political statement with the absence of it.
Well, doesn't political just mean like a dance anyways? Hey, like that's okay. How does one define political? Like,
right.
Is political a dance and a dialogue? Yeah, that's art.
Yeah. Is it? Yeah. And the different methods and media and modalities. To look inward on one's own individual identity can be a sort of a political expression, and it could be a political reaction to the very tribalism we're talking about, the collectivism. Let's kind of like focus on the nuance of the individual and the very personal and profound sort of universes that we each have in ourselves, and how we can connect with each other through that, like I said, through that shared humanity, because we're not we're not just these avatars that have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, different kinds of identity. We're not just our identities. We can. There's much more to us beyond that if we peel the layers.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And through your exploration of being an individual, you're connecting with others who feel the same way.
Right. And they realize, wow, you're this individual much like me, and you feel these things that I feel.
Yeah.
And that even though you may, there's the whole concept of intersectionality. Maybe some of the aspects of your identity don't intersect in quite the same way that I do, but wow, you're very much a human like I am.
Right.
And you very much feel in similar ways, and we're bonding that way.
Yes.
This shared observations, this shared passions.
Yes. Yes. And scent builds tolerance.
Yeah.
It does. I think it does.
Do you mind if I oh, sorry, please go ahead, JJ.
No.
I was just curious because we're talking about something about we're talking about all these beautiful sentiments that I completely agree with about sharing humanity, tolerance, etc. And we are, we're coming up to a season that for many people and many traditions around the world is a lot about family, tolerance, tradition. We have Chinese New Year coming up.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Christmas season. We have just a lot of things. I think we just had Diwali, maybe. I don't remember exactly, but and that made me think. Do either of you have any scents, any materials, any fragrances, any candles, like anything olfactory that especially brings that kind of hopefulness or harmony, or maybe is even associated with a holiday that's around this time of year? Because like going back into like the history of humanity, I think a lot of scholars have said that a time is this time of the world in the northern hemisphere, right, when we're all kind of have to gather close when the nights are dark and it can be very cold. We have to gather close to our communities for survival, historically. So we might need more touch, or more support, or more love. And so I think the holidays represent that in some way in different traditions. Are there any materials or notes or fragrances or candles, just anything that you can think of that seem appropriate to these ideas? Like I'm thinking of one. I'm thinking of Shalimar, which is a really classic perfume that has a really beautiful kind of powdery vanilla base, so it's soft and sweet and very enveloping in that way. That just makes me think of this time of year. Another one is Lavs, which is perfume that has a lot of myrrh and frankincense, and so that it reminds me of incense and these very long traditions of these very historic and religious materials. That again just reminds me of this season for some reason. It's probably connected to a lot of things historically that I don't even know about, that are in my culture, that are they're unconscious at this point. So I'm just curious if you guys have any thoughts on materials or scents for this time of year.
Yeah, Catherine, I'll hand it over to you first.
I love that question, Rachel.
Yeah,
my mind was going all over the place. I think I love the closeness piece. I have to go back to woods. Woods. I have a collection of wood, all the woods, and I think wood and resins feel very grounding this time. And if I could make a non-cloying vanilla fragrance, I would. I think there's something about vanilla that feels like a hug.
Yeah.
When it's done right, and it feels like, because I think vanilla actually has some South American roots of there's a lot of spirituality behind the vanilla, and there's a lot of ritual behind it. And I don't know, it also just, it's in the food that we're eating around now, and I just feel like it's like a nice warm hug. But I also know that it's extraordinarily cloying and disgusting if it's done wrong. So
Yeah, yeah, it can. If you push forward a lot of artificial vanilla, which is necessary because
Yeah.
vanilla is at a premium, vanilla absolute. So for me, before I mention some of mine, we have 15 people. We have 15 likes and we have 19 people tuned in. Let's try to bring up those likes. Let's try to aim for 25 likes for the stream. It's important for the YouTube algorithm, just reminding folks.
Do we get to like it?
Yeah, you can like it too. I think you can. I mean, if you have another window open, you would just want to make sure there's no feedback because then you'll end up hearing.
Okay.
So you just want to make sure you mute if you go to the channel. So for me, I always go back to a time shortly after my mom passed away, and what was so meaningful to me is to just wear frankincense oil. So I was just wearing the essential oil of frankincense. No perfume. It was just the oil itself. And my skin is perfectly, fine with the oil, the raw oil on my skin. And whenever I smell that, I feel, it just feels like it feels sacred. And it is considered a sacred resin. So around this time of year, as winter approaches, I think about, wearing that frankincense oil. And sometimes I would add like an amber oil to it. There is, where did she go? I hope she comes back.
Or she closed the wrong window on accident. Yeah.
Oh, she probably wanted to like the YouTube video, the stream. Well, she'll come back.
She'll come back.
Yeah. But like I would use an amber paste as well. Just keeping it simple. Or as you mentioned, things like unum laves. I go for the incenses, like unum laves or Rêve d'Ancien from Auguste Legrand, and things that are just very heavy, and not heavy in a bad way, but that have a large quantity of frankincense and myrrh and benzoin and labdanum. Yeah, those resins, the sacred resins.
Yeah.
For sure. Oh, spikenard too. Now, spikenard isn't used enough in perfume, and I'm always excited when I see it as a note.
Wait, can I just mention something about spikenard?
Oh, please do. I love it. It's one of my favorite materials.
Okay, and that speaks to your raunchy piece.
It does.
I know. So I was reading about spikenard and how, because I have that also in my studio, and I was reading about how back in like the 18th century or so, they used to add that so that it could enhance your actual human scent. Like, so it would be like all the funky stuff that we smell, like to make it even funkier. But to a modern day nose, and I think JJ, you have a refined kind of more expanded nose, but for like a contemporary nose, a spikenard feels too much like goats, or like doesn't feel like it's.
No, it's true. So if you smell like the raw spikenard oil, what's interesting about it is, to me, it has a combination of this strange kind of vegetal sweetness, the smell of still water in a marsh, and the smell of mammalian bodies. Mammalian, like furry mammalian animals.
Yeah.
Like all together. Like I imagine that, like it's the smell of like, I don't know, like a mink or a weasel or something. It's like it's such a peculiar smell. Yeah, but it's so cool. And here you go. You're talking about these sacred materials. We know that Jesus's feet were bathed in spikenard, and so it has that connection as well. But yeah, that's actually one of my favorite materials, and it very seldom shows up. And when it does, it's really a Disney spikenard. Like they really don't reveal some of those facets that make it so magical. But yeah, I actually have some right here. I have some from Floracopia. Now, the other name for spikenard is Jatamansi. So here's I'll zoom in here. So Floracopia sells some really great pure essential oils. And I use this in meditation too. It's great for meditation. This is Jatamansi. And the Latin name is Narostachys jatamansi. This was wild harvested in Nepal. And I can even open it up now. So it gets kind of sticky. So, yeah. The only thing that it kind of, the only other thing as far as like essential oil materials that it's similar to me, besides valerian is kind of almost in the same vicinity, but also something called calamus. And calamus is actually now banned in perfumery, unless it has a component called beta azarone removed. And it's very hard to find a supplier that has that. So it's extremely expensive. So it's just not used in perfumery. And that smells kind of like a much sweeter, weird kind of like bready, like, I don't know how to, it's just, you have to smell it. It's just really wild stuff. There's actually, Comme des Garçons released a fragrance about 20 years ago called Calamus, and it just somehow approximates it without it being too oppressive for your average consumer buying perfume. But yeah, some of my favorite materials. I wish we could still use Calamus in perfumery. Sorry for the big digression, but I love my materials. Another one that's great is Divana. And Divana is, it is a plant that's in the Artemisia family, but unlike things like wormwood or mugwort, which have that kind of strange pine, minty, sort of pinchy kind of effect, Divana, when you smell like the oil, it smells like a really deep kind of like mulled wine. And it's just amazing how it is like it flows inside of this plant, but it smells like it has like these aspects of like raisin and prune and rose and just gorgeous, gorgeous stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely has that like mulled wine, like that German mulled wine, you know, like Christmas wine.
Yeah. Like what do they call it? Like glug? Like
glue wine. Yeah,
glue wine. Yes, exactly. Hey, Mark, Robes08 has stopped by. Good to see you here. We have 20 people tuned in, and right now, as far as I can see, we have 16 likes. Let's try to get some more likes in. We have 22 people on right now. We're going to be running for just about 8 more minutes. We're going to round things off here pretty soon. And then we'll go backstage for a bit, for as long as we have some time and chit chat there. Does anybody have in the chat any questions, any comments, anything that you would like to share? Scent of the day, scent of the night, scent of the early hours that you want to share? Catherine, you're familiar with some raw materials from your artwork. What are some of the other favorite raw materials of yours that you've incorporated in your work?
It's usually, unfortunately, the very, very expensive materials that I can only get a thumbnail worth.
Tell me about it.
But those are extraordinary, and they just do so much. I recently just did a very fun project, the Fugue project, where I used yarrow, and I've used yarrow before in other compositions, and I very much adore that note. What other things do I have so many things in there, but there's, the yarrow and I use blue tansy.
Oh my God, that's another one of my favorites in my top 10. Can we talk about that?
Yes, please.
The top 10. Oh God.
Yes.
Between that and German chamomile, it's over for me.
Yeah. So this last project, this Fugue project, which is this past Saturday, part of the project was I actually, the way that we were all working was ad hoc and improv kind of, like the way that they did the music and the dance was all improvisational. And so it was important that I make a fragrance that was also improvisational, where it was really, the three of us sat together in my studio and we're kind of handing around materials. And so I was trying not to be directive with how it was made so much as like just taking what they had and then also understanding the symbolism behind it and what we were trying to do. So kind of like a soup of ideas. Yeah. And so the blue tansy and the yarrow featured, as did vanilla. And those two herbs were particularly important because of their history of when you take care of a wound.
Yeah.
So both yarrow and blue tansy have been used for wound. And because again, we're in this like wacky time of, needing a salve for something. So it felt right to use the both. And then also I was just being cheeky because if you make blue tansy a mix, it's blue like toilet water. And in the rest of the thing, I was unboxing Christoph's garbage, and that I had this whole other conversation going on with, people's garbage and, toilets, and voila. So there's where those all featured. Mm-hmm.
That sounds amazing. I wish I'd been there.
Yeah, it was really fun. And I really hope to do it again, maybe closer to you guys. And maybe, it was really fun.
Yeah, I actually use a face oil with blue tansy at night, and it helps me sort of power down and fall asleep. And it's really good for your skin too, blue tansy oil.
Good.
Yeah, I love the smell of it.
Yeah, particular.
It's those fascinating, those azulene and chimazulene, those components, those constituents that give it that blue color. Now, I'm assuming it was the blue yarrow you were using as well. Was it? Yeah.
No. Oh. Regular yarrow.
It's regular yarrow. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Which is also great. Yeah, I love the smell of yarrow. I love you can find it in the just in like wild meadows, yarrow growing, and I love crushing the leaves. It smells so great. We have Fernando Soto who's dropping by here. We have just a few minutes there. Thank you for joining the stream here, Fernando. Wow, that's really awesome. I was just really excited to hear one of my favorite materials. Yeah, very cool, very cool. What about a material that you found, like a natural raw material that you found very challenging, that you found it was hard for you to warm up to it or resonate with it?
Natural materials, really, there's none. I will tell you a funny, none that I feel so challenged by. I will say that, I had a curious journey trying to understand one, which was, it's featured, and again, I'm having a brain fart because it's in the afternoon and that's what happens. But you can help me with this. There's elderflower. Okay. So commercially elderflower, you smell it and you're like, wow, like special, very pretty, very floral. And then you actually get the raw material and you're like, wow, that smells like vomit.
Isn't it gross?
Well, the absolute, if you get the absolute, it does have a little, you smell it and you get a tickle in the back of your throat and you're like, ooh, So that's been I won't say I love the challenge of it. And that's another thing where I realized, is that really elderflower that they're commercially promoting as elderflower? I don't know. Or maybe is it just such a very, very low dose of the elderflower coupled with sugar is creating that very delicious scent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I guess. Yeah.
I think that it's sort of, it's composed with a few different elements to give the effect of the scent and the flavor and the what would be the flavor of elderflower, because certainly not coming from the solvent extracted absolute of the elderflower, and the oil is very low yield. But I remember that the elderflower absolute, very yeasty, very kind of
yeasty,
gritty, yeasty, kind of just it smells a little foul, a little off. Yeah. And I think with some of those, I remember I went through this whole, just a bender of collecting all these different floral and fragrant, absolutes, and just learning. I was just early on, and just being amazed that they were even being produced, because I would try to figure out how in the world do you even incorporate this into a fragrance where it makes sense? Mm-hmm. And some of them, it does make sense, say, if you use a very tiny amount to just a shade or a trace of it to create an effect. But then others just seem to have no discernible characteristic that would be desirable in any way whatsoever. And I remember that being one of them. And then also white cognac oil smelled just like
And I think
to me.
that's a clue, because I think the elderflower extract is mostly used in the beverage industry for like elderflower liqueurs.
Yeah.
And so that could be a place like where they're getting it from for the fragrance industry, but I don't know.
I think the extract is it's not soluble in a manner that could be used for perfume. So while it has like a a great aroma and flavor, it just can't be used in perfume. So you either have to use that absolute or that expensive oil, or you have to just reconstruct it through the magic of perfumery and use all these other materials to kind of give that illusion of it. But yeah. Well, it's now 8:01, and we're going to wrap this up. So we're going to kind of do an outro here. And yes, white cognac oil. There's a green cognac oil, and that one is much more pleasant. That one actually does have sort of like an eau de vie wine, white wine kind of aspect. But the white cognac oil is, it smells like upchuck. All right, let me get my music here. It's my outro music. 1 second. See, I have to do all the producing myself. There's nobody here to help me. All right, here's my outro music. All right, so that will be it for this of Effluvium. What was that? What was
Sorry,
that
that's my dog.
Oh, okay. Wait, is your dog there? Can we show him?
He's, I don't know.
Get him! Get him!
I will try.
There's still a little bit of, the music goes on for about 2 minutes, so you can show him.
Parliament, keep it up, Parliament, up.
The pressure is on.
I have a Shiba Inu. His name is Parliament. And another one named Funkadelic.
So the next Effluvium is going to be in 2 weeks. And I'm in the talks with Patrick Rice. Patrick Rice, he writes for Fragrantica. He is a fragrance writer. So we will have 3 fragrance writers in the house for the next Effluvium episode. So stay tuned for that. Next week, I will be doing the next in the series of materials concentration. So I'm going to be doing amber. So what I'm going to be doing for that live stream is I'm going to be discussing all the different materials that can go into an amber accord or an oriental. We're trying to phase out of that, a spicy amber, woody amber, etc. So we'll go over that. And then in the second hour, what did you say, Catherine?
Zamber. I think there's Zamber instead of using that term oriental.
Zamber. Oh,
amber,
that's...
I've heard, and there's other awesome words to use to replace that.
Nice. Thank you. So just stay tuned for that. That will be the Amber live stream for the material series. I'll be doing that next week. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I always think that that's the end of the song. See, I have to do like a countdown so I know when the song's going to be over with. But yeah, this has been a great conversation. And thank you so much again for Catherine for joining us and being our guest.
Thank you for having me. It's so great to see you both. It's really nice. Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone. Be well. Stay safe.
Bye.